Joker Folie à Deux. Here is the official synopsis. Struggling with his dual identity, failed comedian Arthur Fleck meets the love of his life, Harley Quinn, while incarcerated at Arkham State Hospital. This is the sequel to Todd Phillips' original mega hit titled Joker, which was meant to be a one and done type of film. And it was so popular that after, I guess, enough arm twisting by the studio, he gave in to doing the second movie. The first one was dark and gritty and really engaging and had heart and a ton of emotion. It was a really dope movie. I definitely broke it down in a prior episode, probably a year or two ago. Sorry, I don't remember the episode offhand, but you could check out my playlist on YouTube, the movies playlist. You'll definitely find the chunk of the episode where I discussed the first movie on there. And as we like to do here on the Spun Today podcast, I want to shout out the writers, the foundation, in my opinion. The movie was written and directed by Todd Phillips, along and also credited writers were Scott Silver and Bob Kane. Scott Silver, by the way, who also wrote on the first Joker movie and one of my other favorite movies, 8 Mile. Shout out to each and every one of the writers that put this film together. The movie also stars Joaquin Phoenix, who reprises his role as Joker, Lady Gaga, who plays Harley Quinn, who also killed it. But just like the first movie, I think Joaquin Phoenix he's definitely one of the GOAT actors. He's one of those actors that is so drowned in the essence of whatever it is that he's trying to portray that you don't see the acting. And through that character, you get drawn into this world and immersed in it. So the first thing that stood out to me in this movie is the subtitle, Folie à Deux. It's French for what the hell does that mean? So I look it up and it stands for the presence of the same or similar delusional ideas in two persons closely associated with one another. And we see that theme play out throughout the movie with Arthur Fleck / Joker's character played by Joaquin Phoenix and Harley Quinn's character played by Lady Gaga. And the movie starts out with this slapsticky Bugs Bunny style cartoon, which to me was foreshadowing that his shadow or alter ego or whatever it is that's responsible for all the bad shit that he does is not him, and it's something that he's wrestling with. Because the cartoon that he's watching while, again, locked up in Arkham, they're all watching this cartoon. The cartoon character is going about his business, about to be on stage or it's backstage or something along those lines, and the shadow of the cartoon is taking its place and making it do bad, negative things. And then when shit hits the fan, the shadow disappears. Something else I noticed early on in the movie, which I'm not sure if it was intentional, I haven't heard or read anything on this specifically, but I felt like the light symbolized when he's Joker, and the gloomy dark scenes are when he himself feels like Arthur Fleck, when he's in his reality, in his sadness, in his depression. But every time he was light and jovial and risky and ballsy, there was extra light in the room or on him, or like the moonlight shining in through the cell window. Like some sort of light was present. And I kind of sort of noticed that early on, and I was, that I kept that in the back of my mind as I was watching it, and it felt like that throughout the rest of the film. Again, not sure if that was an intentional thing or not, but just something I picked up on. And his laugh, his iconic fucking creepy ass laugh is so good. Definitely get a lot of that. You had a couple actors from Industry, which is the show that I'm going to break down next, season 3 of the show that I'm going to break down next, and I've broken down seasons 1 and 2 in prior episodes. But it was cool to see a couple actors from there that were in this. Robert Spearing's character from Industry, Harry Lottie, he plays Harvey Dent, and he's a young prosecutor making his bones. I think he's like the assistant DA. And Eric Tao from Industry played by Ken Leung. He was Dr. Victor Liu. My guy Tim Dillon is in this. He plays one of the guards at Arkham. Shout out to Tim Dillon, who's a stand-up comedian and amazing podcaster. Now, Harley Quinn, again, played by Lady Gaga, she was a different kind of crazy. She meets Joker when they pass by each other at Arkham. She's in this Glee Club singing thing program, and she's an inmate at Arkham. And he's going from wherever he's housed to go meet his attorney or something like that. And he passes by this room that she's in. They lock eyes, and they wind up striking up a romance from there. But she essentially tells him that the reason why she's locked up is because she burned down her parents' place with them in it. And she tells him that she's from the same neighborhood that he's from. Because he, by this point, by the way, because of everything that happened in the first movie, with him killing Robert De Niro's character on live television and the riots that ensued, and just like the lore that he had and the followers. And they even made this made-for-TV movie about him. So he was kind of like a D-list celebrity, kind of. But she tells him all this, and it winds up, it turns out that apparently it was all bullshit. She was just like, she self-committed herself because she wanted to get close to him and get to know him and stuff. It's kind of stalkerish, if you ask me. And she still lived at home with her parents in the Upper West Side. She was a little rich girl who went to grad school for psychology. So yeah, different kind of crazy. It was interesting to me to see Arthur's character in how, even in all his craziness, his dual personality, his delusional state of mind, he was also a narcissistic, insecure kind of guy. He constantly wanted the validation that he never got while, being on stage and attempting to do comedy, or from his love interests that he made up in his mind, like his neighbor from the first movie. And he's constantly worried about how he's being seen, how he's being perceived. Like, he really wanted to know if someone saw the TV movie that they made about him and if it was good or not. And he had this inkling to be famous or loved and adored, which all stems, in my opinion, from the character's insecurities. And speaking of his neighbor, Sophie Dumond, played by Zazie Beetz, there's a scene when they're in court and she's on the stand because they're essentially trying to plead insanity and that it was his other personality that did the violent things and it wasn't really Arthur Fleck and he shouldn't be in there, to try to get him out on a technicality. But she says something that just cuts through and pierces his soul, which is that his mother confided in her once upon a time and told her that she couldn't believe that he based his whole life on a story that she told him once about his purpose in life, which was to make people laugh, which is why she used to call him Smiley, I think. And that's why he went so hard at trying to be a stand-up comedian. And she was saying it in this, it was pathetic of him, like in a tone that you could just see broke his heart as he heard it. And it made him flip out in court. Now, what the movie was criticized for most was the fact that it was essentially a musical, which I myself don't prefer when it comes to movies. Actual Broadway musicals I actually do like, but in my head they're compartmentalized into different things. So any movies like La La Land, I think was a musical, which I never saw, by the way. I know it won the Oscar that year, but things like that always turn me off. This was part musical, and I did hear that, but just because I love the first one so much, I had to watch this. And although I could definitely have done without it, I did get it. I did get what, at least I think I did. I feel like I got what Todd Phillips and Scott Silver were going for. Just to slightly correct my writing credits, I just realized that Bob Kane is one of the character creators, not one of the writers of the script of the film. So that's just Todd Phillips and Scott Silver. But to me, it was a way of showing how he felt inside, how he felt awake, alive, and shit was sweet. Even though what we as the audience would see around him was chaos. It was kind of showing how, in his own weird, delusional way, he was in control of the moments that he was in, the situations that he was in, rather. And he was the smartest guy in the room. Even if, in reality, that clearly wasn't the case. But again, I felt like all those breakouts, song and dance scenes were just heightening that idea. And they were done well, tastefully, artsy. So, if that's your lane, which again, for me, it's only really something that I appreciate on theater stages and don't really look to movies for that. So it kind of sort of feels like out of place for me. But if you're into that sort of thing, I'm sure you could get appreciation from it because it was clearly well done. But I felt like if you stripped all of that away from the movie, you would have wound up with a film that lived up to the hype and anticipation. And again, that's coming from someone who enjoyed the film. I still liked it despite that. I just think it would have been way better without it. But soundtrack-wise, the score of all the oldies that were played throughout, I thought was pretty cool. And I call them oldies from my perspective, but the setting of the film is like in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, around there. So probably pretty contemporary for when the film takes place. I like the scene, spoiler alert, where they're in the courtroom and the verdict is being read and he's being found guilty for everything. And the side of the court blows up. Someone set off a car bomb right next to the courtroom, literally rips the wall out of the courtroom. And then it shows Harvey Dent disoriented and sitting down with half his face blown off, setting it up for the Two-Face character. But who knows, because Todd Phillips famously didn't want to make this movie, let alone like a Two-Face spin-off or something like that. But it was kind of more so like a reminder of the world that you're in, right? You're in that DC comic Batman world. And I like something that I heard on Screen Crush, where they said that people that get upset about this Joker movie because it's not true to the origins of any of the origin stories of the Joker from the comic books is essentially that those critiques are unfounded, because what this movie is doing is just taking elements of the comic and remixing the characters. It's doing a remix in film form. So it's not meant to be that. And the movie essentially, towards the very end, we see Joaquin Phoenix's character, Joker, getting shanked in Arkham, seemingly being set up by the guard to get shanked in a hallway where he was left by himself by another inmate that you see throughout the film. It's kind of creepy and in the background. And he stabs and kills Joaquin Phoenix. And as the camera pans out, you see that character cutting his own face, a smile into his own face, akin to the Heath Ledger Joker character, which rubbed some people the wrong way. They were like, how can you even touch such an iconic character or allude to it, that's the real Joker, which is kind of like what the first movie set up, right? The Joaquin Phoenix was not necessarily the Joker he was not the Joker that fights Batman, because we see Bruce Wayne as a little baby or a young kid in the first Joker movie. But this Joker spawns all these followers and uprisings and inspires who will become the Joker that winds up being, Batman's arch nemesis. And then with taking this character that shanks this one and then, cuts his face, you kind of playing with that idea that this is that Heath Ledger Joker character. I personally thought it was a cool nod to that iconic character. I don't think it's blasphemous or anything like that, but to each their own. And the movie, again, starts with that whole Looney Tunes sketch in the beginning of it, and it ends with him watching Looney Tunes. So part of me felt like, similar to the first movie, did he just imagine this whole shit? Is he just that fucked and crazy in the brain that everything that we saw in the film, again, was like all in his head? Was it not just the musical scenes that were in his head, but in fact, everything? Two other items I'd like to touch on related to the film is the whole conspiracy of, again, speaking to Todd Phillips and him being vocal about just making the first Joker and that's it. He never intended to do a second movie, but then clearly, obviously, he did. He wound up doing it. There's a quote in the film where he says, "I have a sneaking suspicion that we're not giving the fans what they want," which seemed like meta commentary about the fact that Todd Phillips wasn't giving the fans what they wanted and wound up doing this musical thing just to piss everybody the fuck off. Which honestly, after seeing a couple interviews with him, I don't think that was it. I think he was just trying to do like this artsy thing and marrying the two styles or genres of storytelling, if you will. But I thought that was an interesting take. And something else that I thought that was really cool was that iconic scene in this movie, which was used throughout the trailers and stuff like that. So I was familiar with it even before watching the film, but where he's locked up and behind a glass and Lady Gaga's character Harley Quinn goes to visit him and she puts lipstick on the glass and then he smiles into it and it looks like it's the Joker makeup lipstick on him. And Todd Phillips said that they took like an hour to get that shot right. And the way they did it was they put a light smudge on the mirror, on the glass, where, to indicate to her the perfect spot for her to draw the lipstick smile. And then Joaquin essentially had to hit that mark and smile just right and just enough to fill in that lipstick smile, which I thought was pretty cool and creative and just interesting. That's a little of the behind the scenes, if you will, type of shit that I like. But yeah, I thought it was a good movie. It was worth a watch. Again, could I have done without the musical numbers and stuff like that? Yes, because it's not my thing. But that aside, I still thought it was a worthwhile watch, especially if you're a fan of the first one. If you're a fan and as invested as I was in that first film, how could you not want to see how the story plays out? It's a must. But yeah, that's my little recap and review of Joker Folie à Deux.